A very good evening, aspirants. Welcome to Hindu News Analysis brought to you by Shankar IAS Academy. Today is 31st January 2022. See, the list of articles we are going to discuss today is displayed on the screen. Kindly go through it. Let's start our discussion. Look at this editorial. This editorial talks about inequality. It mainly talks about increasing inequality in India during the pandemic and lack of government policy to reduce inequality. The article says that the government must focus on equity in the budget to bring down inequality. Finally, there is also a suggestion to address inequality in India. This is the essence of this editorial. See, this editorial has a little bit of political flavor to it. So I will be ignoring this in our discussion and we will be focusing mainly on the data provided in the editorial. Actually, there is a lot of data in this editorial that highlights inequality in India. Look at this previous year mains question taken from 2020 General Studies paper 1. Let me read out the question. COVID-19 pandemic accelerated class inequalities and poverty in India. Comment. See, lot of the data and the points we will be discussing today can be used in a question like this. You also try to incorporate the data that we will be discussing today in your mains answer. See, the structure of today's discussion is going to be like this. First, we will be discussing the Oxfam International's Inequality Report. Then we will discuss how the pandemic and some government policies accelerated inequality. And finally, we will discuss some measures to combat inequality. See, I will also be listing out some constitutional provision that mandates the government to address inequality. This is how the structure of today's discussion is going to be. So before getting into our discussion, look at this. Here I have highlighted the syllabus regarding today's discussion. Kindly go through it. Now let us start our discussion. First, let us take a look at the Oxfam International's Inequality Report. See, we know that from mid-2020 to present, India as a whole has been facing so many economic hardships. But during the same period, the number of billionaires in India also increased. In 2020, there were 102 billionaires in India and this number increased to 142 in 2021. The collective wealth of the billionaires in India was rupees 23.14 lakh crore in 2020 and this number increased to rupees 53.16 lakh crore in 2021. See, I am just reiterating here, there is global pandemic for the last 2 years. So during the pandemic, when most of us were struggling to make ends meet, the billionaires in India managed to double their wealth. Now compare this with the bottom of in India's economic order. 84% of households in the country suffered a decline in their income during the same period. Also, 4.6 crore Indians fell into extreme poverty during the same period. This number is half of the new global poor according to the United Nations. That is, of all the people who fell into extreme poverty last year, half of them were from India. The pandemic was particularly harsh on daily wage workers. See, according to National Crime Record Bureau, that is NCRB, the daily wage workers topped the category of people who died of suicide in 2020. On a global level, every day, inequality contributes to the deaths of at least 21,300 people. That is, one person dies every 4 seconds due to inequality. So the title of this year's Oxfam's Inequality Report, which is Inequality Kills, is very apt. See, according to Oxfam, this widening inequality is not by chance but by choice. I am repeating the statement. The widening inequality is not by chance but by choice. It is the structural policies of the government that aids the widening inequality. This structure that favors the reach over this power, according to Oxfam, is economic violence. Now, let's look at some of the policies of the Indian government that can be termed as economic violence. See, India must be one of the only countries in the world where during the COVID-19 pandemic, the health budget has declined. And that too by a huge 10% in the last year. See, in India, the government is not promoting the private health sector in a huge way. This, coupled with reduced health spending, will also increase inequality. See, we know that private healthcare is very costly in India. This high cost of private healthcare continues to affect marginalized communities, pushing them further into poverty. Next is regarding social security spending. See, social security expenditure has declined from a already pathetically low 1.5% in 2020 to 21 to just 0.6% of the union budget in 2022. Here, let us take two examples for comparison. First, let us take social security pensions, that is for elderly, disabled and widows. See, the government provides them with a pension in the range of rupees 200 to rupees 300 per month. See, this amount was fixed 15 years ago and it was not at all revised even once. The reason given by the government is that there is no sufficient funds. Now contrast this with salaries and pensions of policymakers. See, last year the policymakers increased their own salaries and pensions, a DA increase to 28% and gave themselves a bonus of 3%. So, with only the excess cost to the Indian exchequer due to increase in the salary of government employees, the social security pension budget for 3.3 crore beneficiaries might have been covered. So, it is not about the funds but is about the priority of the government. This is why the report terms the policy of the government as economic violence. See, during the pandemic, the present government has to turn to the National Food Security Act and the MG Act to save millions of Indians from hunger and premature death. After increasing allocation in the first phase of the pandemic, the allocations were frozen and budget for these programs were cut in the budget 2021 to 2022. According to the People's Action for Employment Guarantee, approximately 2,64,000 crore will be needed to guarantee 100 days work for currently active job cards. But the government in 2021 budget allocated only 73,000 crore. See, this budget must be increased to prevent people falling into extreme poverty. Now next is in regards to education. See, India's government expenditure on education has stagnated, remaining around 3% of GDP between 2014-15 to 2018-19. Now compare this with other middle income countries like Brazil, which spends 6.1%, and South Africa, which spends 6.8%. It is over twice that of what Indian government is spending, right? See, comparing India with Norway and Sweden is not fair, but we must at least match the education spending done by Brazil and South Africa. Due to the government's less spending on education, the students are moving from government to private school, which is very costly. So, parents are taking their children out of school. See, the inequality even widened due to the pandemic. So, many students are not able to access online education. And with students dropping out of school, child marriage is on the rise. Between June and October 2020, child marriages reportedly increased by more than 33%. So, the government must take steps to increase education spending. Finally, with regard to the tax structure, we know that indirect tax affects everyone irrespective of the income of the person. But indirect tax as a share of the union government revenue has been increasing at a time when there is a decline in the proportion of corporate tax for the last 4 years. See, the government has lowered the corporate tax from 30% to 22% to attract investment, and this has resulted in a loss of rupees 1.5 lakh crore, which has contributed to the increase in India's fiscal deficit. If India's fiscal deficit is more, the government will not be able to spend more money on welfare schemes. So this will further increase inequality. In addition to this, the government increased additional tax on fuel, which everyone uses. But the wealth tax for the super rich has been abolished in 2016. These trends show that the poor, marginalized and middle class people paid high taxes despite going through a raging pandemic, while the rich made more money without paying their fair share. Till now, we saw some policies of the government which accelerated inequality. Now, let us see the provisions of the budget that actually mandated the government to address inequality. Now, let us see the provisions of the constitution that actually mandated the government to address inequality. These provisions can be expected in your preliminary examination, so kindly pay attention. See, it is a duty of the government to follow Part 4 of the Constitution, that is DPSP. If followed, the directive principles of state policy will guide the government to address inequality. Here, Article 38 subclause 1 states that the government shall strive to promote the welfare of the people, and Article 38 clause 2 states that the government shall strive to minimize the inequality in income and endeavor to eliminate inequalities in status, facilities and opportunities. Now the next article 39C directs the government to make policies that do not result in concentration of wealth. But is any of this actually followed? Probably not. In reality, inequalities are increasing at a rapid pace. Here, I want to quote another interesting data from the Oxfam report. It states that it would take 941 years for a minimum wage worker in rural India to earn what the top paid executive at a leading Indian government company earns in a year. See, the present national floor level minimum wage is rupees 178 per day. Here the government must at least implement the recommendation of the Satpathy Commission. This commission in January 2019 recommended changing the minimum wage to rupees 375 per day and national floor level minimum wage to rupees 9,750 per month. So the government, before stressing on its citizens to follow the duties, must first follow its duties mentioned in the DPSP and try to address inequality. Till now, we have seen some data mentioned in the Oxfam Inequality Report, some policies of the government that increased inequality and some constitutional provisions about inequality. Now finally, let us see some ways to address inequality. Firstly, the government must recognize inequality is real and agree to measure it. That is, the government must first recognize there is an inequality and then proper measures must be devised to measure inequality. And this will help the government devise focused policy to address inequality. Second, the government must redistribute India's wealth from the super rich people to generate resources for the majority. Here, to support the increase in social security spending, the editorial suggests that the government can levy 2% wealth tax and 33% inheritance tax on top 1% of our population. That is the rich people. This alone will fetch an estimated rupees 11 lakh crore per annum. And the next is global minimum tax. The World Inequality Report suggested a minimum global tax on MNC at 25%. This will yield rupees 1.2 billion for India. See, actually, inequality in India widened after globalization, and the biggest gainers of globalization are the MNCs, which is the multinational companies. So, the global minimum tax will help redistribute the wealth by supporting the government social security program. Next is that a temporary 1% surcharge on the richest 10% population could help raise additional cost of rupees 8.7 lakh crore, which could be utilized to increase the education and health budget. The increase in human capital by increase and efficient spending on education and health will help the government in the long run. Finally, the government must try to stop privatization and commercialization of essential services. Government must also take steps to address jobless growth. Also, the government must bring back stronger social protection measures for India's informal sector workers. And that's all regarding this editorial. Before concluding the discussion, I am going to quote 2015 IMF report. That is, as per the report, if the income share of the top 20% people, that is the rich people, increases, the GDP growth actually declines over the medium term. But at the same time, an increase in the income share of bottom 20% of poor people is associated with higher GDP growth. Addressing inequality not just makes ethical sense but also economic sense. That's what I am trying to say. So in this budget, our finance minister must focus more on equity. Hope they will do so. So in this article, we have discussed about inequality, how it is rising in India, and we also discussed some of the ways to address inequality. In the process, we also analyzed data from Oxfam International and IMF. So with this learning, we will move on to the next news article. See, this news article mentions that a bomb cyclone hit eastern USA. So in this discussion, let us see what is it. See, basically, when we say cyclone, it means a large-scale circulation of winds. This circulation is around a central region of low atmospheric pressure. Now, when this rotational low pressure system originates over tropical or subtropical waters, we call it as a tropical cyclone. Now, the low pressure system required for the formation of a tropical cyclone is 5 to 6 HPA, that is hectopascal. This means tropical cyclone forms when the central pressure falls by 5 to 6 HPA from the surrounding. In such a scenario, the maximum sustained wind speed reaches 34 knots, that is about 62 kilometers per hour. This creates a vast violent whirl of 150 to 1000 kilometers width, and this whirl progresses along the surface of the sea at a rate of 300 to 500 kilometers a day. And this is what happens in a tropical cyclone. Now, cyclone also originate in mid-latitude region, that is in the 30 degree to 60 degree latitude in the northern hemisphere. These are called mid-latitude cyclones. So, a mid-latitude cyclone is an area of low pressure located between 30 degree and 60 degree latitude. Now, to understand how it forms, let us take the polar front theory. According to this theory, they form along a boundary which separates the polar air from warmer air to the south. That is, it separates the colder polar easterlies from the warmer westerlies. Look at the representation now. Assume this is the boundary. Along this boundary, a counterclockwise circulation can set up at the surface. And this circulation acts in a way that it takes warm air up from the south and cold air down from the north. Why? Because the colder air migrates equatorward and warmer air move poleward. And we call this process called cyclogenesis. Now, in the center of this circulation, there is some mass convergence. So, when all the air hit the center, we have rising motion because it has nowhere else to go. These forms clouds. Now, for the cyclone to intensify, the diverging air upward has to be greater than the converging air at the surface. This essentially pulls more air upwards and the surface pressure of the system drops, which intensifies the cyclone. So, this is how a mid-latitude cyclone forms. Also note that blizzards are a result of these type of cyclones. Blizzard is a severe snowstorm with high winds. But why we are discussing about mid-latitude cyclone now? It is because a bomb cyclone is a mid-latitude cyclone. But it will be called bomb cyclone when the minimum central air pressure of a mid-latitude cyclone drops very quickly, that is, drops at least 24 millibars in 24 hours. See, 1 millibar is equal to 1 HPA. So, we can say when minimum central air pressure drops at least 24 HPA in 24 hours, it will create a bomb cyclone. It occurs when the cyclone explosively strengthens or rapidly intensifies. So, the resultant cyclone is called bomb cyclone, but the rapidly strengthening weather system is a process called bombogenesis or explosive cyclogenesis. Now, the problem is most cyclones do not intensify rapidly in this way. So, when the bomb cyclone forms, it shows that it has access to the optimal ingredients for strengthening, such as high amounts of heat, moisture and rising air. This can produce significant harmful impacts because they will intensify the blizzards. And note that the US eastern coastline is one of the regions where bombogenesis is most common. That is why now it is affected by a bomb cyclone and severe snowstorm. In this article, we have seen what is a cyclone, what is a mid-latitude cyclone and what is a bomb cyclone, its formation, etc. That's all regarding this article. Now we will take up the next news article. See this article here. It is about the Pegasus Spyware. See, this spyware is developed by Israeli-based NSO group. According to an article in New York Times, this spyware is used as a tool to firmly support Israel's interest across the globe. The investigative article said that Israel got countries that had historically been against it on the Palestine issue to switch sides by offering this powerful spyware. This is because it can be deployed not only against drug traffickers and terrorists but also against opposition activists and journalists. So in this context, let us learn about the spyware, its usage in India, and finally we shall see what Indian laws has to say about this spyware. Before that, the syllabus relevant to this article is highlighted here for your reference. Kindly go through it. Now let us begin our discussion by seeing what is this Pegasus. See, it is a spyware. Spyware is a sort of malicious software that is usually installed in a person's computer or mobile even without the consent. It will damage the system or it will steal the sensitive data. See, the Pegasus spyware was created by the Israeli cyber intelligence firm NSO Group. It is also designed to hack the computers or mobile devices to gain access to the device and retrieve the data from it without the user consent. And then it will deliver the data to the third party who is actually spying. However, the parent organization of this Pegasus spyware claims that it is intended to help government authorities to be used against terrorists and criminals by spying on them. Now let us see how it works. See, the Pegasus spyware was first identified around 4 to 5 years ago when a human rights activist from UAE received a text message that was actually a phishing setup. He sent those messages to the security agency and it was found that if he had opened those links, his phone would have been infected with the malware named Pegasus. See, this was in initial stages. Earlier versions of Pegasus were installed on smartphones through vulnerabilities in commonly used apps or by peer phishing, which involves tricking a targeted user into clicking a link or opening a document that secretly installs this software. It can also be installed over a wireless receiver located near the target or manually if an agent can steal the target's phone. Since 2019, Pegasus users have been able to install the software on smartphones with a missed call on WhatsApp and can even delete the record of the missed call. This makes it impossible for the phone's users, that is the phone's owner, to know anything. Another way is by simply sending a message to the user's phone that produces no notification. That means the latest version of this spyware does not require the smartphone users to do anything. All that is required for a successful spyware attack and installation is having a particular vulnerable app or an operating system installed on the device. This is known as zero-click exploit. Note this term zero-click exploit because in preliminary examination it can be asked like the term zero-click exploit sometimes seen in news refers to which of the following. They may even give confusing option. Here in this regard it is a spyware. Now we will continue our discussion. See, Pegasus uses several such exploits or weakness to enter Android and Apple phones. See, many of these exploits were reportedly zero-day. That means even the device manufacturers were unaware of these weaknesses. Pegasus can also be delivered over the air from a nearby wireless transmitter or manually inserted if the target phone is physically available. Once inside the phone, Pegasus seeks root privileges, which is a high level of control over the phone. And this will enable the spyware to establish communications with its controllers through an anonymized network of internet addresses and servers. It can then start transmitting any data stored on the phone to its command and control centers. And once the Pegasus gets into the smartphone, the text messages, emails, contacts, photos, passwords, etc. can be accessed by the other party. In fact, the access is given to such an extent that even the device mic or camera can also be operated by the one who is spying. The Pegasus spyware can even access the end-to-end encrypted message or files because now it can steal them before the encryption or after the decryption. That is, it can also steal your OTPs, sensitive messages, etc. Now let us see the cases in India. See, according to this article, it is said that reports that appeared in July 2021 from the Pegasus project in India, at least 40 journalists, cabinet ministers and holders of the constitutional positions are subjected to surveillance using Pegasus. And these reports were based on a database of about 50,000 phone numbers accessed by the Paris-based non-profit organizations. They are Amnesty International and Forbidden Stories. These phone numbers are the numbers of interest to the clients of the NSO group, primarily from 10 countries. See, according to the British daily newspaper, The Guardian, Amnesty International's security lab has tested 64 of the phones linked to the Indian numbers in the database and found that 23 were successfully infected and 14 showed signs of attempted penetration. The idea behind saying India is using the spyware is that it is graded as a cyber weapon, so it can be sold only to authorized government entities as per Israeli law. According to the article, Pegasus was part of a $2 billion package of sophisticated weapons and intelligence gear transaction between India and Israel. And this was after PM Narendra Modi's visit to Israel, as he became the first Indian Prime Minister to visit Israel. This article says that it was after this deal that India changed its historically pro-Palestine stance, because it voted in Israel's favor in 2019 at the United Nations Economic and Social Council to deny observer status to a Palestinian human rights organization. And what has India said about this? See, Indian government has so far neither confirmed nor denied that it has deployed Pegasus for any operation. Several petitions were filed with the Supreme Court alleging that the government has indulged in mass surveillance. And the petitions have quoted that this is an attempt to curtail free speech. In response to the petition, the Supreme Court asked the center to file a detailed affidavit regarding the use of Pegasus. However, the center refused to comply, arguing that it would compromise national security. So after this, the Supreme Court on October 2021 appointed an expert panel monitored by retired Supreme Court Judge Justice R.V. Ravindran to investigate and file a report on the spying allegations. But former Indian ambassador to the United Nations, Syed Akbaruddin, denied the claim that the alleged Pegasus sale influenced India's 2019 vote against Palestine at the United Nations. See, having seen the case in India, now let us see the laws in India that talks about the spyware scenarios. You can use these laws in any cyber security related question in GS paper 3, since these are some of the static laws in our country. Firstly, Section 5, Clause 2 of the Indian Telegraph Act 1885 states that the government can intercept a message or a class of messages when it is in the interest of sovereignty and integrity of India, security of the state, friendly relations with foreign states, or public order, or preventing incitement to the commission of an offence. And secondly, Rule 419A was added to the Telegraph Rules in 2007 after the verdict in the People's Union for Civil Liberties vs. Union of India case in 1996. In that verdict, what Supreme Court said? The Supreme Court said that telephonic conversations are covered by the right to privacy, which can be breached only if there is a established procedure. And under Rule 419A, surveillance needs the sanction of the Home Secretary at the center or state level. But in unavoidable circumstances, it can be cleared by a Joint Secretary or officers above if they have the Home Secretary's authorization. Thirdly, in the case Puttaswamy vs. Union of India verdict of 2017, the Supreme Court further reiterated the need for oversight of surveillance, stating it should be legally valid and serve legitimate aim of the government. That means there should be a procedures to check any abuse of surveillance. Fourthly, Section 69 of the IT Act 2000 deals with electronic surveillance. See, it facilitates government interception or monitoring or decryption of any information through a computer resource. Again, this also if it is in the interest of sovereignty or integrity of India, defense of India, friendly relation with foreign states or public order, etc. Finally, it is said that the use of Pegasus is illegal as it constitutes unauthorized access under Section 66 of IT Act. See, Section 66 of IT Act prescribes punishment to anyone who gains unauthorized access and downloads or introduces or causes to be introduced any computer contaminant or computer virus. See, in this article, we have seen what this Pegasus is. It is a spyware. We have seen how it is used across country, particularly in India. We have also seen some of the laws associated with spywares. With this, we have come to the end of our discussion. Now, let us move on to the next news article. Look at this article. This article from the text and context page talks about a scheme that was announced in December, that is the Design Linked Incentive DLI scheme. It mentions the need of such a scheme and its possible benefits. So today, let us see the features of this scheme along with its need and benefits. See, the syllabus relevant to this article is highlighted here for your reference. Kindly go through it. So what is this scheme all about? It is about creating a vibrant ecosystem for semiconductor chip design in the country. See, semiconductor are materials such as silicon with tunable electrical conductivity. The semiconductors are the base for most electronics and it enables the construction of complex integrated circuits or chips. These complex integrated circuits or chips power the advanced technologies required for healthcare, communications, computing, transportation, etc. So basically, from smartphones, health wearables, laptop to smart TVs, microwave units, air conditioners and more, all of these use semiconductor chip. And with the breakthrough technologies like artificial intelligence, the Internet of Things, that is IoT, and quantum computing, the need for semiconductors is rapidly growing. In this manner, semiconductors are the backbone of today's digital revolution. To take this to the next level, we need even more advanced chip with greater computational power and memory capacity. All this could be made possible only through a proper semiconductor industry and supply chain. Now, India is trying to establish such an industry in India through the DLI scheme. We will now see its objective. Its objectives are nurturing and facilitating the growth of the domestic companies, startups and MSMEs. Then achieving significant indigenization in semiconductor content and intellectual properties involved in the electronic products which are deployed in the country. And this will directly facilitate import substitution and provide value addition in electronic sector. Finally, the scheme also aims to strengthen and facilitate the access to semiconductor design infrastructure for the startups and MSME. Now, what are the notable features of the scheme? First, the scheme will provide financial incentives and design infrastructure support to domestic companies, startups and MSMEs. These companies are the ones involved across various stages of development and deployment of semiconductor design for integrated circuits, chipsets, SoCs, that is system on chips, and semiconductor linked design. This incentive and the support will be extended over a period of 5 years. So as part of this, the scheme first aims to nurture at least 20 domestic companies involved in semiconductor design. The scheme will help them in achieving a turnover of more than 1,500 crores in the next 5 years. Note that the nodal agency for implementation of the scheme is CDAC, that is the Center for Development of Advanced Computing. It is a scientific society operating under Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology. Further note that the scheme has 3 components. First component is chip design infrastructure support. Under this, the CDAC will set up the India Chip Center. This center will host the state-of-the-art design infrastructure and facilitate its access to supported companies. And the second component is product design linked incentive. Under this, a reimbursement of up to 50% of the eligible expenditure, that is the total cost, will be provided as fiscal support to applicants. It will be provided to the ones who are engaged in semiconductor design. Note that the reimbursement has a ceiling of rupees 15 crore per application. And the next component is deployment linked incentive. And under this component, an incentive will be provided to approved applicants whose semiconductor design for integrated circuits are deployed in electronic products. Such an incentive will be 6% to 4% of the net sales turnover of the company over 5 years. And the maximum incentive provided will be rupees 30 crore per application. Also, the scheme is open for receiving applications for 3 years initially starting from 1st of January 2022. So far, we have seen some important features of the scheme. Now, let us see its benefits. First, it will lead to complete indigenization or near complete indigenization and deployment of semiconductors. Second, it will decrease our import dependency on countries like Taiwan and South Korea because according to the data, these countries produce up to 70% of the world's semiconductors. And the third major benefit is that it will provide the needed capital incentive and the investment in the sector. It is because generally setting up of a semiconductor fabrication unit, which are the manufacturing units, need enormous investment, particularly in billions. So, this scheme will address the previously present challenges in India like lack of investments and lack of supportive government policies. And overall, it is expected to encourage the domestic companies, startups and MSMEs to develop and deploy the semiconductor design. And this will put India on the world map for semiconductor manufacturing. And that's all regarding this article. Now we will move on to the next news article. Look at this news article. The news here is that 5 militants were killed in 2 separate operations on Sunday. One operation was by the police and other was by the army. The article also says that the family members of Inayat, who was one of the slain assailant, will now face charges under the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, that is UAPA. So in this context, let us revise some important provisions of Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. See, the UAPA was passed in 1967 and it is an act to provide for more effective prevention of certain unlawful activities of individuals and associations and for dealing with terrorist activities. Unlawful activity refers to any action taken by an individual or association intended to disrupt the territorial integrity and sovereignty of India. And if the central government is of opinion that any association is or has become an unlawful association, it may declare such association to be unlawful by notification in the official gazette. Then the central government may constitute a tribunal known as the Unlawful Activities Prevention Tribunal as and when necessary for the purpose of adjudicating whether or not an association be declared as unlawful. And if the declaration made therein is confirmed by the tribunal, the declaration will remain in force for a period of 5 years from the date on which the notification becomes effective. And remember, in August 2019, the Act was amended to designate individuals as terrorists on certain grounds provided in the Act. It is to be noted that under UAPA, both Indian and foreign nationals can be charged. It will be applicable to the offenders in the same manner even if crime is committed on a foreign land outside India. Now we will see some of the important sections under the Act. See, under Section 13 of the Act, any act causing disaffection against India is seen as an unlawful act. And this includes taking part or committing or advocating, advising or inciting the commission of any unlawful activity by any person. And that person shall be punishable with imprisonment for a term which may extend to 7 years and shall also be liable to fine. And Section 14 says that an offence punishable under this Act is a cognizable offence. Now, according to Section 15, whoever does any act with the intent to threaten or likely to threaten the unity, integrity, security or sovereignty of India or an intent to strike terror or likely to strike terror in the people in India or in any foreign country will be seen as committing a terrorist act. Remember, the highest punishment for terrorist act will be death penalty. And note that under the UAPA, the investigating agency can file a charge sheet in maximum 180 days after the arrest. And the duration can be extended further after intimating the court. And accordingly, the Act empowers the Director General of NIA to grant approval of seizure or attachment of property when the case is investigated by the said agency. The Act also empowers the officers of INA of the rank of inspector or above to investigate cases of terrorism in addition to those conducted by the DSP or ACP or above rank officer in that state. And that's all regarding Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. Now we have come to the end of our news article discussion. With this learning, we will solve some of the preliminary practice questions. Now look at the first question. It is with regard to the bomb cyclone. Let me read out the question. Which of the following statements is or are correct with reference to bomb cyclone recently seen in news? The first statement is, it is a tropical cyclone. And the second statement, it is characterized by a drop of at least 24 millibars in central air pressure in 24 hours. The third statement, the process involved is called explosive cyclogenesis. You have to select the correct answer. See here, the statement 1 is incorrect because it is not a tropical cyclone but a mid-latitude cyclone. We have seen this in our discussion, right? And regarding statement 2 and statement 3, it is correct. So our correct answer is option D, 2 and 3 only. Look at the second question. Consider the following statements with reference to DLI scheme. The first statement is, it aims to achieve significant indigenization in semiconductor content and intellectual properties involved in the electronic products. It provides fiscal support in the form of reimbursement. And the third statement states that it will nurture at least 100 domestic companies involved in the semiconductor design. Which of the following statements are correct? See, the first statement is the objective of DLI scheme. So, it is correct. The second statement is also correct because it provides reimbursement of up to 50%. And the third statement, it is incorrect because the scheme aims to nurture 20 domestic industries only. So, our final answer is option B, 1 and 2 only. Look at the last prelims question. Consider the following statement regarding National Investigation Agency. It works under the Ministry of Defense. It is a statutory body established under the National Investigation Agency Act of 2008. And the third statement, it is the Central Counter-Terrorism Law Enforcement Agency. Which of the statements given above are correct? See here, the statement 1 is incorrect because NIA works under the Ministry of Home Affairs. It is not under Ministry of Defense. Now we will see some points about NIA. See, NIA is empowered to deal with terror-related crimes across the states without special permission from the states. And it is the central agency that deals with offense affecting the sovereignty, security and integrity of India, security of state, friendly relations with foreign state. It also prosecutes offense against atomic and nuclear facilities. See, it will also investigate and prosecute offense that involve smuggling in high-quality counterfeit Indian currency. So here, statement 2 and statement 3 are correct. This is an established fact. So our answer here will be option B, 2 and 3 only. The mains questions are displayed here. Write your answers and post it in the comment section. If you like the video, hit the like button, post your comments and share the video with your friends. And don't forget to subscribe Shankar IAS Academy YouTube channel. Thank you.